Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome you to Beyond the Stacks, where we will be discussing the library of the future. My name is Melissa Kam, and I'm the Chief Development Officer for the Library Foundation of Los Angeles. I'm honored to welcome you to today's event here at the Richard J. Riordan Central Library. Last year, our topic was libraries as pillars of democracy, and we know that remains true now more than ever. Libraries have always been spaces of knowledge, discovery, and connection. Today, they are more than just places to borrow books. They are community hubs, technology access points, learning centers, and even safe havens in times of crisis. As our cities evolve, so do our libraries, responding to the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. Today, we'll explore what the future looks like. How can libraries continue to bridge the digital divide? How do they support civic engagement and lifelong learning? And how do public-private partnerships, like those made possible by the Library Foundation of Los Angeles, help make these innovations a reality? To help us answer these questions, we are joined by two visionary leaders this morning who will explore the evolving role of the libraries and share how LA is leading the way in reimagining what a public library can be. John Szabo is the city librarian of the Los Angeles Public Library. John was just named the 2025 Librarian of the Year by Library Journal. Stacy Lieberman, President and CEO. Yes, welcome. Stacy Lieberman, President and CEO of the Library Foundation of Los Angeles. And moderating today's discussion is Austin Cross, an award-winning journalist, the host of Morning Edition and Air Talk Fridays on LAS 89.3, and a native Angeleno. Thank you for being here to be part of this conversation. We'll have time for questions from the audience at the end of the talk today. Now, please join me in welcoming our guest.
Hello, thank you so much for coming out. I would like to first start off by giving my congratulations to John as well for being named 2025 Librarian of the Year by the Library Journal. And that citation mentions his work aligning the library with citywide priorities like homelessness, supporting immigrant communities. We're going to talk about a lot of that today. But I want to start off, John, by just asking you about how you see the role of the library in the city right now, how you see that role has evolved over the recent years.
Sure. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. Really looking forward to the conversation. Public libraries across the nation, and certainly here in LA, are just incredibly dynamic, and they are more relevant than ever. And we're doing all of the things that you expect a public library to do, that you remember from your childhood, all the warm, fuzzy things from story times and the wonderful experience of the happenstance of finding a book that you weren't looking for that you might find. All of those things are happening right now in our libraries across the city. But our libraries are doing so much more. They are incredibly vibrant and active within the digital space. No library in North America circulates more ebooks and e-audiobooks than the LA Public Library. We're doing incredible work to address digital equity, and even in a big, progressive, forward-thinking city like LA, digital equity is an enormous issue, and the library is doing really great work in that space. And the issues that LA is facing, from homelessness and digital equity, certainly there are points of intersection between the work of our libraries, and I'm just so proud of that. And I'm really proud that LA is fertile ground for this work. And when I tell people that the library does work in these spaces, people are more apt to say, yeah, that's fantastic. We understand that very forward-thinking role of the public library. So bottom line, we're having enormous impact, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm also proud of all those things that we do that people expect a public library to do from years past.
And Stacy, this public-private partnership between the foundation and the library actually gives the library the ability to do many of the programs we're going to talk about today, but also it gives it an advantage over libraries that maybe don't have that private arm. Can you talk to us a little bit about the relationship between the library and the foundation, how that came to be, and how that helps them continue their mission, continue their goals as we look to, as the theme of this event, the Library of the Future, as we look to the future?
Thank you, Austin, and thank you, all of you, for being here today. Our role with working so closely with the Los Angeles Public Library, first, we start from a place of the library welcomes everyone. And there are very few institutions in our city and in our nation that do that today. And we are in a position of helping the library through fundraising, through advocacy, and through programs that support the work of the library. And really the key element is that we can do what John talked about, is that we can help the library be more responsive. And the library can come to us. I mean, one of the most recent example, of course, sadly, is the loss of the Palisades branch library and the services that are needed throughout our community. And we were able to pop up a new fund, working very closely with our partners in the library to help address that. So just to respond to the origin story, too, of our foundation, it actually was born out of the Central Library fire. And after the fire in 1986, when there was the Save the Books campaign, where civic leaders and corporate leaders and community members joined together, there was a recognition there that this is something that should continue. There are so many people who feel so strongly about supporting the public library, in this case, Central Library. How do we keep that going? And our foundation was first founded a little over 30 years ago.
Thank you for that, Stacy. And Stacy mentioned the fires, John. That is an event that actually affected the library. Can you give us the news of exactly what happened? And also what the library is now doing to help serve those communities, the communities affected by the fires.
Yes, and you know, the first thing that comes to mind in answering your question is that 9 of our staff lost their homes. And we're so thankful to the Library Foundation of Los Angeles for setting up those funds and for doing it so quickly. To be able to have a partner like that, to be able to move quickly and to do that was just enormous. And it also just sent a really important message. It wasn't just about the dollars and the setting up of the funds. It was a message of support for the library system, but also the incredible people who work for the Los Angeles Public Library. So thank you for that. We just horribly lost the Palisades branch library. The entire library was destroyed. It was a beautiful 13,000 square foot library. I'm sure a number of you have been there. It opened just in 2003. A dearly loved library in the Palisades, loved by that community, as all of our branches are. But that community loved so much what happened in that library, all of the great activities that happen. We have a wonderful support group that supports that library individually out there in the Palisades. And, you know, in the aftermath of the fires, I am so proud of the work that our staff did. And I will say, without John Szabo or anybody in administration saying, you need to begin doing that or going here, our staff immediately were doing outreach and putting together a plan to do outreach to the Disaster Recovery Center. To this day, from the first day that Disaster Recovery Center was set up, there has been a presence of the Los Angeles Public Library in that recovery center, and helping people with information, certainly issuing library cards and things like that. But one of the biggest services that we provided there is printing. And scanning documents, printing documents that people didn't have. It was a simple need, and people were saying, can you do that? And so we provided that. We completely transitioned our outreach teams to serve the 4 shelters that were initially open, to bring services there, to bring Wi-Fi, to distribute laptops and mobile Wi-Fi hotspots. And we also did family programming at the Family Resource Center, and we'll always be there for the Palisades. And we're already thinking about what mobile services look like in the early days now, and then a temporary presence, and we're also already in discussions about the rebuilding of the Palisades Library, and we're absolutely, of course, committed to that, and there is also, I will tell you, a tremendous sense of urgency to have that library rebuilt, understanding not only the importance of just the library and the services that it provides to that community, but what rebuilding a civic institution like the public library will mean to the community in terms of feeling like their community is back and is going to be back fully.
And I'll say that library's been part of communities not only for a long time, but even going back to other tragedies like the pandemic recently. Were there any lessons that you learned from pandemic response to serving the needs of community that have maybe aided you now when it comes to thinking about the needs of the people affected by the fires?
I think so, and I know many in the room have heard about the incredible work that our libraries did and our effort to make the collections of the library accessible through our library to-go service and putting books in bags and things like that during the pandemic and doing all that we could, even when we couldn't open our facilities to be available. But I think the real lesson learned from the pandemic that applies here is that it's thinking about how we as public servants at the public library can assist the city in this moment. And I think sometimes that role is even outside of what we normally think of in the public library. And so we have staff that are fabulous with data analytics that have assisted other departments like animal services. We've been helpful in a number of different areas. We've helped field phone calls with our trauma-informed staff, fielding phone calls for information and referrals and things like that. So it's thinking bigger than even the library, but just always being there.
And Stacy, the foundation also took part in helping assist people affected by the fires. Talk to us about what the foundation has done.
Yeah, so the foundation established 2 new funds, one for the Palisades recovery and the kind of outreach services that John talked about, and also an emergency fund to support the library staff who've lost their homes or who have been displaced. And one of the things that was so just heartening to see is that when we accept donations, we also have an opportunity for people to share why they give. And many people wrote in and said, you were there for us during the pandemic, and we want to be here for you. And people have felt, not only from the Los Angeles local community, but we've received donations from 25 different states, someone from Poland, someone from the UK, library systems and foundations from coast to coast. And I think it's really profound for people to see a community library up in flames and to realize what a core it is as a community hub, and it really touched people's hearts, I think, and we are happy to be able to support that recovery. Some of the programs that we support, including an initiative called Your Author Series, was able to pivot and be part of the outreach services that were then in the rec centers. There are story times for children and providing free books, and also a program that the Library Foundation initially supported to have social workers in libraries. There was a pilot program that has now become a staple and very important part of the work that the library does, and a social worker was out in supporting the ways that John talked about, just meeting needs of the community wherever they are.
A major theme that I hear, especially when it comes to providing, say, Wi-Fi access points for people affected by the fires, is not only the library connecting with people, but the library making sure that people stay connected with each other and with the community around them. So I want to use that as a way to pivot to one of the specific ways, one among many of the ways that the library is helping to make sure that people stay connected. You mentioned the digital divide a little bit earlier, digital equity. And you have the program called the Cybernauts, which I want to ask about, because the Cybernauts is aimed at making sure that Angelenos can stay connected. They know how to be connected. John, do you want to talk to us a little bit about that program?
Absolutely, and an important part of digital equity is not only access to technology. I think about the last 30 years in libraries and how the work that we do in the space has evolved. First, it was just plugging the equipment into the wall and making it available to everyone, and then it was really making internet access accessible, and then it became more mobile. But digital literacy has always been part of the role of the public library in this space. And people come to, when Stacy mentioned, and we welcome everyone. And when we say we welcome everyone at the public library, we mean it with every cell in our being. We really, really mean that. And that means people come to us with all levels of skill. People who, need help setting up an email account to communicate with a relative. People who need help in just searching the library's catalog, finding information. People who need to be able to access the online courses that we offer. The accredited online high school that the library makes accessible. So our cybernauts are helping people with all of those things. And that program, funded by the Library Foundation of Los Angeles, is loved by our staff and so appreciated by our staff because it supplements the work that they are doing in the branch libraries. And to have those individuals assist our patrons with all of those tech needs and digital literacy skills and providing access is just enormously beneficial to us.
We're going to stay with this theme of staying connected with people and talk about the library's work with unhoused communities. Some 4,000 people have been assisted, I believe I've read directly by the library. Talk to me about the assistance that you provide to that community.
Absolutely. So, libraries have been asked about and have talked about and have been intimately familiar with the issue of homelessness in big cities and smaller communities as well. It's an issue that we're very familiar with. And, so long as people abide by our rules and so forth, they're absolutely welcome in the library. And people who are unhoused make use of all of the services that the library provides and are welcome to do so. One of the things that we're very, very proud of is the social worker program that the Library Foundation, as Stacy mentioned, gave us the resources to pilot. And in that pilot, we were very sure it was going to work, but we proved that it worked in that pilot. And the library has then just owned it. And we now have social workers on staff. We have contracts with outside agencies that provide mental health and social services. And it's the strategy behind it is not that we are endeavoring to be a social services agency at the public library, but it's frankly necessary to provide those services so that we can be a place that is there for everyone and where everyone can make use of the library. And so those are really, really important. And stemming from that is a new classification of employee we have in the library system called Community Services Representative. And these are individuals who are trained in de-escalation, they are trauma-informed, they have lived experience, and they are dealing with certain issues in the library where it doesn't make sense to have security or necessarily police involved, but can really help address those issues. So it's become a broad program that we're just enormously proud of, and I think other libraries are learning from some of the work that we're doing here.
I found that part particularly exciting, is that you have people to work with them who are trauma-informed, who maybe have that experience. Where did you pick up that model? Where did you develop that model? Because it's very much a reality in Los Angeles right now. It was inevitable that you would end up working with people who might have high levels of trauma, people who are unhoused. Where did you look to when you thought about how to provide the specific needs that those people had?
Well, our libraries have some very challenging issues that we deal with, some very, very challenging security issues and things. And we came to the realization a number of years ago that we had really one tool in our toolbox. We did staff training around de-escalation and things like that, but we really had one tool in our toolbox, and that was security, LAPD. And that still is, frankly and unfortunately, very important to deal with some of the issues that happen in our libraries. It absolutely is. That said, we needed more tools. And so we looked at what the incidents and issues really were and tried to come up with a toolbox of solutions that really address that. And we are not the first library to take a trauma-informed approach, and we're not the first library actually to have social workers. That model has been used in some other libraries, San Francisco notably, and we we look to our staff who know these issues best. They are on the front lines, and they had a list of recommendations after we did a really thorough review, and we implemented these solutions, and that pilot project was the first step in that.
Very fascinating. Stacy, just to focus on another group that the library has been serving, that the foundation has had a part in, is working with people who are hoping to become citizens, hoping to become new citizens in the U.S. You want to tell us a little bit about that program?
That program is the New Americans Initiative, and it is one that the library has been leading the way on, so I may need John to fill in a little bit more there. But like all of the work that the library does, we have a way where we help enhance. So I just want to say a little bit more about the Cybernauts program, if
please.
I can. What's wonderful about that program, which not only is available in about 37 branch libraries, it's also available online to people. And the people we hire through a partner to work as Cybernauts, it's also an incredible workforce development opportunity. And many of them go on to become employees of the city, employees in our library, and a number of our team members have been out visiting branches. It's something that we like to do every year and get to know all the staff and to hear more from the patrons about what's needed. And when we hear about the Cybernauts program, we've been learning from the librarians. Not only do people need the kind of one-on-one support that John talked about with learning to apply for jobs and getting help in that way, there are also now opportunities for classes with the Cybernauts where those who are working one-on-one are getting opportunities to teach some of what they're hearing, like how do we get to understand the kind of spam and phishing threats that we get, and really, again, responding to those community needs. So I just wanted to highlight that as a way that we are able to enhance the work and respond directly to what the librarians are doing.
John, something to add?
And I just want to say I love that the foundation staff are out in our branches and are seeing what I'm talking about all of the time, and our staff love when the foundation is, and they're able to then say thank you for the work that the foundation and the foundation's donors are doing for the library. The New Americans Initiative is something that touches every single one of our libraries that we're incredibly proud of. We started it in 2012. As a program really exclusively to help people on that first step to naturalization. It was a partnership with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, which is that part of the federal government that oversees naturalization, green cards, and so forth. And it initially was called Citizenship Corners, where we put materials, flashcards, information about the N400 form, and in our libraries, and we trained staff to answer just sort of the basic questions about naturalization. And then it grew and grew and grew, and the demand was huge. And so the demand for services became much greater, and so we've rebranded the entire program as the New Americans Initiative, as Stacy mentioned. And we provide one-on-one immigration services through 7 New American centers, which are actually in our libraries. 1 is here in the International Languages Department, and then 6 are at branch libraries, physical spaces where this work happens. It also happens online. We contract with a number of agencies to provide these services, and we also train some of our staff to provide these services. We also, as part of that program, host citizenship ceremonies here at Central Library. Mighty powerful to witness that in this room. It's one of the most exciting things that we do. And it's such a perfect role for the public library, because we're doing this because there's a need for it in the community. People need these services. It also sends a message that the public library is for everyone, and that everyone in the community, documented, undocumented, can use the public library, and only good comes from that. But it also helps New Americans to see the public library as an institution that is for them and that has services that they might not expect us to have, and materials in the languages that they might speak. And so it's just a wonderful strategic thing for the library, as well as a service delivery mechanism.
It's important to note that with all of the services that the library provides, there's a huge language component to that. that you're not only serving people, you're serving people in the way that's most comfortable for them to understand as well.
Enormously important, and I think this is the recognition of that has really grown in recent years within the city, and I'm obviously biased because I'm the city librarian, but the library is a real leader within city government in this space. We've been acquiring materials in many, many languages for a very, very long time. We have materials in our collections in dozens and dozens and dozens of languages. We actively acquire materials in about 12 or so of the most spoken languages in LA on an ongoing basis. We have collections in a variety of languages at many of our branches and try our best to be nimble in that, knowing that demographics change and communities change. And the International Languages Department here is wonderful because when we recognize that there might be a growing Armenian-speaking population in Sunland, Tahunga, that we can put a deposit collection there as that collection builds. But it's also important recognizing that it's important to have staff that have those language abilities, and also our communications channels need to be mindful of that language access as well. And you spoke about the pandemic earlier. One of the things that I'm really proud that our library did is we have a translations team here of staff members who help to translate press releases and other documents. They helped the city translate a number of health communications and other communications to make certain that it reached many parts of the city. And it's also, frankly, part of a broader idea of equity and making certain that the library can be used by everyone and that everyone knows what it is we're doing here and how we're delivering on their investment.
We've talked about so many different groups that the library works with. Before we move on, I still want to talk about young people as well, because you have a number of programs for young people. There are the student zones, there's the Get Ready for College, there's Teens Leading Change. Would you like to just go through some of those and what we provide, or what you provide to young people? Stacy?
Yeah. So a big emphasis of the work at the foundation is supporting programs that help young people. And they range from programs like Read Baby Read, where we try to get a backpack to expectant parents so they can get a onesie and their first board book and invited back to the library to get their first library card. To the kinds of
that sounds so great.
Student zones that have homework helpers in nearly 40 branches around the city, where we have paid, similar to the Cybernauts, where we have paid homework helpers who are there and they regularly see students who come. We were recently at the Pacoima branch, and we heard from a homework helper who shared that there was a parent who has shared that she is not fluent in English and her daughter needed help, and she's coming back regularly to get the kind of support needed. So we recognize how important that one-on-one support is, and really looking at ways to enhance what the library is already providing. The Teens Leading Change initiative is one that we're very proud of, and that has been supported by a number of different of our dearest stakeholders, and they see how important it is for teens to get the skills to make a difference in their communities. So this is a civic engagement project, and it is at branch libraries, typically between, say, 9 to 12 each season, and teens come together working with their young adult librarians in their branches, and they identify issues that they care about in their community. So it may range from school violence to needing more green spaces to the challenges of social media, and they work together and they come up with plans for how they might make change in their community. And it develops leadership skills and the kind of skills of working together in a group, and it also provides volunteer hours for them. And every year they do a showcase here at Central Library. And when you are seeing the kind of work that they do and the kinds of teens working together, you feel hopeful about the future. And I'll mention one other program where we do have a number of programs that prepare students to get ready for college. And again, that's a great example of how the Library Foundation works with the Los Angeles Public Library and just evolves. And so while that program in the past focused heavily on test preparation, now that most California universities don't require and tests are optional, they are working more closely with students on really thinking about what their path might be, where they might want to go to school, what kind of support they need with financial aid forms for their families. Next month, we have a motivational seminar here that our librarians will put on. And we have over 200 middle school students who will be here in this auditorium, and we'll get a glimpse hearing from college students about the importance of going to college, the fact that college, even though they may be first generation, is not out of reach for them. There are even going to be sessions on study abroad to sort of plant the seed that this could be for you too. And at last year's program and the program before, there were students who really shared their own lived experiences about whether they had been at community college and transferred, whether they had been in university and had no idea that they would have internship opportunities in political science to go to DC. And think about what that does when it plants the seed in a 7th or 8th grade student, you know, who took a bus from wherever they were, they're with their friends here, and really planting those seeds for the future. And often, when we talk about the work that the Library Foundation does, we like to say that it helps fuel dreams. So,
John, something to add?
I was just going to say, you know, serving youth has always been, and I think will always be at the core of who we are at the LA Public Library. And to have the Library Foundation support programs like Read Baby Read and Teens Leading Change and We Read Together is just enormously important. You know, could there be a more exciting and wonderful program than Read Baby Read? I mean, it helps the library establish a relationship with the absolute youngest Angelenos. You know, it's their first book comes from the LA Public Library. Of course it should come from the LA Public Library, and, you know, they can keep it, and it hopefully is the first of many books in their home library. And you think about teens and having this really creative, wonderful, exciting program that teens help to inform and that empowers them is so important, because that's an audience that's tough for any organization to hold on to. And teen services has always been something, frankly, that the LA Public Library has felt strongly about. We are very lucky that we have young adult librarians in all of our locations. But to have a program like that is really, really wonderful. And it's been such a success. And it's been made a success by both the resources from the Library Foundation as well as the young adult librarians who have that magical talent and rapport to be able to work well and have teens engaged with the library.
Well, it should not be surprising that reading is such a central part to the library. And Stacy, I understand that you have a grant. This is, I guess, some new news. This is some breaking news, as we say. You haven't talked about this grant yet publicly, but it will go to assist with reading. Would you like to share the good news?
yes, I would. So again, one of the benefits of this public-private partnership is that we are regularly in dialogue with our librarians, and then we regularly are talking to communities of supporters or donors, and they're interested in youth and education, and we're talking to our librarians about, you know, how we can enhance that work. And we're so thrilled that in the past few months we've received a major $1 million pledge from the Marisa Antonini Foundation, and it is a support for struggling readers, and particularly students with dyslexia. And the way that we've been thinking about this too, you've heard about some of the work that the library does with students one-on-one, and the homework helpers and the student zones, and all of the commitment that we have to youth and literacy. But this is an opportunity to say, you know, what are the challenges where people are still struggling? Where does what schools provide, you know, begin and end, and where can libraries step in? And so this grant starts with a research grant about sort of assessing the landscape about how we can support struggling readers. One of my own children is dyslexic, so I know that challenging journey of where schools can help and where it's often left to the families. So we're incredibly excited about and proud of this initiative, which is called MARISA, the Marisa Antonini Reading Initiative for Student Achievement. And it will be right now in this research phase, and will be rolling out and continuing to support the kinds of programs like the We Read Together and other projects that help families build a foundation of literacy.
What I hear when you talk about this new grant and this new program and the other programs is they all seem to lower the barrier of entry to, I would say, having a good life. I mean, reading, it's one of the most basic concepts that you could grasp to get you to the next level. But also college education, so many of the other programs that you've talked about. John, before we move on, I want to ask you about AI, because that is the new thing. There's obviously a lot of investment in it in the private world and on Wall Street. Some people have thought maybe AI would do away with libraries if people would have all the information at their fingertips. How do you see the library working with AI?
Well, it's what librarians are talking about all the time these days, and really thinking of it as a tool that can help us do our work and lower the barriers for access as best as possible. I think there are a number of exciting roles. Libraries have an enormous amount of metadata around our collections. I think about our photo collection and 4 million or so images, over 200,000 of those images online, data associated with each of those images, and what AI might be able to do in terms of creating metadata for other images that are scanned. I think there's work around predictive analytics with how people make use of our collections. One of the things, you hear us up here talking about, and we could go on for 9 hours, about all of the things that the library offers, but one of the things that we can do a better job of and think more about, and there might be a role for AI here, is just how we connect people to the next thing that the library offers. Oh, you just got a accredited high school diploma from the library, and you have these career goals. What do we offer? Is it a workshop in the meeting room over here? Is it a program that we're offering at the Los Feliz branch library? What is it that's next for you? Is it this collection? Is it this digital resource? And to think more strategically about what we might present to people and let them know about, because it's very, very challenging to let people know about all of the things that we do. One of the things that we hear a lot at the library is, oh, I had no idea you did that. And it's because we have this incredibly and beautiful broad mission of serving everyone, and that we have, there are over 1,000 programs at the library each month. So there are things that happen in our libraries that are fabulous that even I don't know about. And I think that's great. So I think there are a number of roles, and I think, as time goes on, those possibilities will reveal itself. Another thing is we think a lot about as it relates to AI is privacy, right, and how that plays a role. And also, as we've done with other things in digital equity work, is what role does the library have to help the general public understand AI, and that feeds into public programming and collections and online classes as well.
You're right, we could go on for 9 hours. There's so much to talk about. In just a minute, we're going to open it up to audience questions, but I wanted to ask you both each a question before we get to that. John, specifically about the political climate that we find ourselves in. Many libraries across the country have faced book bans, community efforts to get certain books removed from the libraries. Where do you fall on that within the library?
Well, it's, libraries, public libraries specifically, have this incredible history of being incredibly trusted and loved institutions in communities of all political backgrounds. So, that's important to put out there. And the thing that concerns me right now is that the efforts to challenge books in libraries' collections, library programming, and outright banning of books and materials in libraries it concerns me that it is attacking and scratching at that incredible relationship that we have with our communities and that trusted reputation that we have. And that is something that we here in LA, even though we are not experiencing lots of book challenges and book bans, it's something that I always tell folks in LA that we should be very vigilant about and very aware of, plugged into, because of that potential effect broadly. I will also say that I'm very proud of the from a policy perspective and a practice perspective, that the Los Angeles Public Library stands for intellectual freedom and stands against the banning of books and materials. And at the core of what a public library is to have stories on our shelves, both physical shelves, digital shelves, that tell the stories of everyone in our community. I mean, that's really, really important. And you will find that librarians in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and Keokuk, Iowa, and Bakersfield, and LA, and New York, everywhere have that commitment. There are things in this library that deeply offend me, that I don't want to look at, but I will defend it being there for others to be able to have access to. So I just encourage everyone to be very vigilant. And what is happening is very scary. The number of book challenges and book bans is at a level not seen since the McCarthy era. And you look at the subject matter of the items being challenged, and they fall within a very, very narrow category of subjects.
Stacy, the foundation can also help work as an advocate for the library as well in this way.
Yes, we've been thinking a lot about the way that our work with literacy initiatives, how important they are, and how that the importance of incorporating media literacy and information literacy as we go forward. And to be an information and media literate city, there may be a way, and we have to roll into all of the work that we're doing already on literacy. And so, again, our public programs, we have our series of allowed public programs, cultural programs. We feature often authors who in various public libraries may be on those banned books lists, and we think it's important to feature those voices and have people experiencing them, and also to support those authors.
We're going to go to the audience for questions in just a second, but I wanted to give you 30 seconds to shout out anything I didn't have time to get to, because there are so many things to talk about. Is there anything that you want to highlight?
Well, I wanted to share an incredible program that we have this Saturday night called Night at the Library, Building Stories. And it's a first ever sort of after hours immersive event that, in partnership with the Los Angeles Public Library, LAist, and the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art that will open next year, will be celebrating an after-hours festival where there will be music and dance performances, opportunities for live drawing. There will be story times for grown-ups of different genres, and there will be an opera piece. We're working in partnership with LAPL Insight that will be on the beautiful landings of Central Library. And so I just wanted to highlight that, because part of the role that we play as the foundation is to raise awareness for the Los Angeles Public Library and to welcome people to Central Library after hours with all kinds of ways for them to come in and learn about the library. The Octavia Lab Makerspace will be open. People will have an opportunity to see the kinds of incredible work that goes on there, from podcasting studios to sewing machines. And it's also a little sneak peek to next year, where Central Library will be celebrating its 100th anniversary. And we see that as an incredible opportunity to just kind of reintroduce not only the beautiful building, Central Library, and its incredible architecture, but to remind people of the role of libraries in our communities, what they were 100 years ago and what they may be 100 years from now. So if you haven't yet purchased your ticket, we'd love to see you on Saturday night at that Night at the Library, but more importantly, as we look ahead to celebrating the 100th anniversary of Central Library and the way that our libraries lift up our communities and also bring us together. and help mitigate some of the divides.
Thank you for that. It sounds like a really exciting event. Well, with that, we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. If you raise your hand, somebody will come bring a microphone to you, and you can ask your question of Stacy or John. Does anybody have a question? Okay, we have a good few questions. There's one in the front here that I saw, and then the woman behind him. And then there's one over there in the back. So let's start up in front here.
Check. Can you guys hear me?
There you go.
There we
Sound
go.
great.
Thank you guys for just speaking on so many important subjects today. One question I had was, and this was something that John alluded to just a few minutes ago, is this general sentiment amongst individuals here or amongst the public of, oh, I had no idea the library did X, Y, Z. And I'm wondering from the three of you, like, when you reflect on the past decade, has that sentiment lessened? Has it remained stagnant? Has it increased? Just because coming from a communications and marketing standpoint, it's like, oh, I've worked with so many organizations that, like the library and other places, that have done really important work, and I feel like a constant thing that I've encountered is, oh, we're doing all of this great stuff, and man, I wish more people knew about it. You know, like, so again, reflecting on maybe the past decade, has that sentiment of, oh, I had no idea the library did that, has that lessened? Has it remained stagnant? Has it increased? How do you guys feel about that?
That's such a great question, and my answer is that I sense that it has lessened, and I think and not just here in LA, but I think across the country, the conversations that I have and have had for 30 plus years being in this field about, oh, are people still using libraries, or wow, that's really quaint, are you all still open, or that kind of thing, that they're less so. And I think that's because libraries, it's both a challenge and an opportunity, have been pulled into a lot of different spaces. And when we're pulled into those different spaces, sometimes there are resource issues around that. Sometimes there are some, personnel and training issues around that. But generally speaking, it's a good thing because the libraries step up and we play a role, and we're good partners with our foundations, certainly, but with other organizations in the community. And word gets out that the library is a dynamic place that's doing a lot of unexpected things, and it's like, wow, I didn't know the library was doing that. Wow, 1,000 people got their diplomas from the library. That's amazing. How terrific is that? So the message about the impact is getting out there. That, plus, I am a big believer in that if the good residents of this city are investing millions and millions of dollars in the LA Public Library through their tax dollars, and the generous donors to the Library Foundation are contributing money to help us be innovative and fabulous, part of our responsibility of being good stewards of those public and philanthropic resources is to let them know what we're doing and to have a robust, active, well-invested in communications infrastructure. And we have done that with the library and have invested more and more in that. And the library, one example of that is our amazing social media presence. Lauren Skinner is out here somewhere, our Director of Public Relations and Marketing. She and her team are fabulous, but it is a challenge because of this broad mission of what we do and the zillion things that you heard about today and a zillion things that we do that we didn't even talk about today that make it challenging. But it's a wonderful challenge to have, but I think it's lessened, to answer your question.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything to add to that, Stacey?
I'll just add that our Library Foundation board, a number of directors are here today, is very tuned in to the opportunities that we can play there. We have a communications task force. We're in dialogue with a big funder about a storytelling initiative, and we continue to talk about that importance of, if you say, like, did you know, even the fact that we tell people you can get your free books on Libby, your audiobooks, you don't need to use Audible, and did you know your New York Times digital subscription? And there are so many things that people don't know. And again, when I talk about the 100th anniversary, we really see a focal point being a big communications campaign to spread the word about what the library does. And I think in this time, too, thinking about some of the other issues in our society, and especially social isolation, like bringing people together to the library from all different backgrounds. Again, it's one of the only places where that can happen, and we see it in the kinds of programs like Teens Leading Change, and we love to see it with adults too, and some of our initiatives with older adults are doing that.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your question. I think the woman behind you had a question as well, right? So that was the second one that I saw. If we will get you a microphone, then you can ask your question. And just so I could see who else had a question, so I can have one over there, one there, one there, one there. Oh, handful of questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I love the library. 2 questions. One, have you been affected by cuts in federal funding? And 2, how about DEI? Has that affected you? Thank you.
In terms of federal funding, the vast majority of funds that the library gets are through local property tax dollars. The library's budget is 0.03% times the assessed value of property in the city. We receive some state money that's passed through from federal government, and sometimes direct money from the federal government, but it's usually a very small amount, and it's for a special project. So to answer your question, no, we've not seen those cuts yet, but certainly paying attention to that, not only for us, but how it affects libraries across the country, and thinking about what advocacy we might be able to engage in to help that. There are many libraries that are really reliant on those federal dollars, so that's something that's important. As far as DEI, the idea that the library wants to be a diverse place with our staff, with the stretching our arms wide and welcoming everyone in, having a staff that represents the communities we serve, having collections that represent the communities we serve, being mindful of equity, relentlessly thinking about who are we not serving. That's one of the things I love about librarians, is that they're constantly thinking, is there a community in our city that we're not serving? Is it an issue that can be solved with collections or programming or signage or whatever it is? And so those are things that we're committed to, regardless of what you call them or what happens in Washington, D.C. It's just core to who we are as a public library. And if we're not committed to that, then there's something we've lost in sort of our foundation.
There's another question with this woman here in the striped shirt.
Hi, my question is for John. So I'm a current MLIS student, hoping to hopefully work for the LAPL, and I was wondering if you could maybe just speak to kind of the hiring outlook for the next few years for librarians and just library workers in general.
Sure. Well, the library has over 1,600 staff. Over 400 of them are librarians. The wonderful thing about LAPL is that our librarians with MLIS degrees are working in so many different interesting areas. And so whether you want to be a photo librarian or a librarian in our genealogy area, or serving children in Porter Ranch or San Pedro, there's a role here. We have been very fortunate since the voters of Los Angeles passed Measure L back in March of 2011. It's hard to believe it's been that many years ago now. And I never want to mention Measure L without saying thank you to Los Angeles. And so for those of you who are here and voted for it, thank you so much. I can't even imagine what our library system would be like without that. And that has allowed the outlook to be good. We're always mindful. It's all about the economic health of the city and the value of property in the city. But as long as our good friend, the property assessor Jeffrey Prang, keeps up with those assessments and doesn't reassess your property and downgrade it, then we're good. So as the health of the city goes, and I think there are things there that you heard today that we're fundamentally doing that help the economic health of the city. But we are always hiring librarians, and we, of course, work through a civil service process, and if you aren't familiar with it already, our personnel office here at the LA Public Library can help explain that process and how that works. But yes, we are committed to continuing to hire librarians, and I anticipate we'll do so into the future.
All right, thank you for that question. More hands? This one on the corner, then you. So, and there's one up in this top corner. Okay, let's start over here to the far right. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for the information. It's exciting to think about the future of the library. And my question is for John. It's really exciting to be able to share all the resources that the library has with everyone, and I get a similar reaction, people surprised by the amazing resources that we have. But my question is kind of, the people who are kind of distributing those resources are the staff members, and anecdotally I hear a lot of people talking about how they feel overworked or burned out, or that they're dealing with traumatic situations, and that they're wondering, it's not always easy for them to go into work. I'm wondering what the library of the future kind of looks like with regards to caring for staff and making them feel welcome, and that they understand that their work is meaningful and that they feel welcomed at the library.
It's a great question, and just to acknowledge, absolutely, our staff are dealing with the tough issues that Los Angeles faces, and those issues that the city is facing come into our doors and can be very challenging and very difficult. There are a variety of resources that we provide. One of the things that we've been intentional about is as we think about the hiring of social workers and having social workers on staff and also contracting for these mental health and social services, is making those services available to staff that are impacted just as our public is by all of these issues. And we found in the early months and I guess years now of offering these services is that they are very, very, very much needed by our staff. I am optimistic and hopeful that our city will be effective at dealing with these broad issues, and that will diminish, and then we'll help in that regard. I think it's also about reminding people of how important the public library is and how important it is to invest in your public library and advocate for your public library so that we can bring in the additional resources, additional expertise and staffing to provide all of the incredible array of resources that we're providing, and that we can also have the training that equips our staff to deal with these things. But it's the demand on the library to do all of these additional things, I think of as more of an opportunity, but certainly we need the resources to be able to deal with the challenges that it presents.
We have time for 2 more questions.
All right, could I see those hands again just so I can remember? There's one right there, yes.
Thank you for squeezing me in. Very insightful presentation. I feel like I did learn a lot about all the resources that you guys offer. I have a more maybe horizon question of what you guys see as the top customer experience pain points, or like from library borrowers to to staff. Like, what would rise to the top that you guys see over the next 5 years that you guys are focused on?
Well, one huge issue that concerns me is it's kind of a wonky thing, but just licensing of published content and the expense of that. The content that you all use through Libby. And Angelenos make great use of it and use it a lot. Is expensive. It's not free, of course. And so that, and how publishing and the intermediaries between publishers and libraries change the business model of how that content is made accessible, limitations on it. The traditional way that we acquired content in the past was we buy a book, and we put that book, we catalog it and make it discoverable in our catalog and put it on the shelf. And if we can get 600 circulations out of that book, awesome. Before it falls apart, that's great. Doesn't work that way in the digital space. And we don't buy that, with some exception, we don't buy that digital copy and then have it as much as we buy a certain number of uses or circulations. And so, and publishing has struggled with this as well, trying to figure out the business model as it relates to libraries. So that concerns me greatly because it's a huge part of our deliverable. And there are probably others as well, but that's the one that immediately comes to mind in answering your question.
Stacy, something to add?
I'll add that the library is currently undergoing a strategic planning process. And as part of that plan, I think there's also questions about physical spaces of libraries and how they're used and how they've evolved over time, especially when some of the libraries were built decades ago. And the foundation sort of stands ready to support that strategic plan and where it may go. And I just want to highlight that one of the things that, again, I think is so important about libraries as gathering spaces is that opportunity to discover. And when you're looking at digital books and you're picking what you need, you know, it eliminates a little bit of that moment of discovery. And I wanted to encourage everyone here today. We have an exhibition on view called No Prior Art, Illustrations of Invention. And it uses the Los Angeles Public Library's patent collection as sort of a springboard for looking at libraries as places of creativity and invention and innovation. And when I think about the future and the role that our library plays, again, I do sort of come back to the way libraries are these community hubs, and what does that look like when, you know, the need for as many shelves for books may change, but that need to gather and connect people may be the primary point.
We're about 5 minutes over. We promised one more question, though. Was there one more question? You right in front there.
Hey all.
Hello.
I have a question. Is there a potential future for a gun-free library? Meaning security officers not carrying guns.
Yeah, so the security staff that we have in our libraries, both contract and LAPD, do not carry guns. And the only individuals that are armed are our director of security, who is a sworn officer, and another officer who is assigned to the library. And then, of course, when there are incidents that require a police officer to come into the library, obviously they do. Otherwise, we are essentially a gun-free space.
Well, I wanted to thank you both for making the time. Los Angeles City Librarian John Szabo, Library Foundation of Los Angeles President and CEO Stacy Lieberman. And thank you so much for coming out today as well.
Thank you to you, Austin.
Thank you, Austin. Thanks so much. Thank you all for coming.
And everyone, please join me in thanking our moderator, Austin Cross, for guiding today's conversation. My name is Alex Nguyen, and I'm the Director of Major and Planned Giving for the Library Foundation of Los Angeles. And thank you once again to John Szabo, Stacy Lieberman, and Austin for today's discussion. As we've heard, the Los Angeles Public Library is not just keeping up with change, it's leading the way. From expanding digital access and civic engagement to reimagining library spaces and services to be accessible for everyone. The future of our libraries is bright, innovative, and deeply connected to the needs of our communities. Of course, none of this happens without the support of people like you. Your engagement helps ensure that libraries remain vibrant and accessible for generations to come. There are so many ways to get more engaged with the Library Foundation and to support the great work of the Los Angeles Public Library. Through our membership programs, exhibitions, cultural and literary events, and other exciting initiatives, we hope that you will join us. Many of our staff, board members, council members, and supporters are here today, and we invite you to continue these conversations and join us in the courtyard right outside for refreshments. As Stacy mentioned, our exhibition, No Prior Art, Illustrations of Invention, is currently on view upstairs in the Getty Galleries. The show is part of the Getty Foundation's PST Art and explores the intersection of art, science, and invention, so please check it out while you're here. So once again, thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you at future library and Library Foundation events. Thank you, everyone.